fighting a brutal 48-hour battle, taking over 300 casualties, only to realize the enemy never even existed. You just spent 2 days fighting ghosts in an empty server. In 1943, 34,000 Allied troops dropped into a massive PvP invasion, completely blinded by fog. Suddenly, the ridgeline erupted in heavy machine gun fire, and the server melted down into absolute chaos. Today, we are breaking down Operation Cottage, the most disastrous psychological glitch of World War II, where a massive army invaded an island that the enemy had already deleted. Do not look away. To understand how a massive modern army ends up fighting itself, you have to look at the map they were forced to spawn into, the Aleutian Islands. This is a cursed biome. Located between Alaska and Russia, it is a frozen, barren wasteland of jagged rocks, freezing rain, and a permanent, suffocating fog. In 1942, the Japanese military captured 2 of these islands, Attu and Kiska. It was the only time during World War II that an enemy force occupied North American soil. The United States military absolutely lost its mind. They needed to reclaim this territory at all costs. In May 1943, the US launched a brutal, bloody assault to take back the first island, Attu. The Japanese defenders fought to the absolute last man in devastating banzai charges. It was a meat grinder. So when it was time to invade the second island, Kiska, the Allies were not taking any chances. They built the ultimate invasion build. They assembled a massive fleet of nearly 100 warships, heavy bombers, and an overwhelming ground force of 34,000 heavily armed US and Canadian troops. Intelligence reports stated that there were roughly 5,000 elite Japanese soldiers entrenched in the mountains of Kiska, waiting to replicate the exact same bloody massacre that happened on Attu. The Allied troops were psychologically primed for absolute hell. On August 15, 1943, Operation Cottage begins. The massive Allied fleet arrives off the coast of Kiska. The invasion force piles into landing craft and pushes toward the beach, but the environment immediately turns against them. The fog is so dense, it feels like a physical wall. Fog of war is not just a tactical concept here, it is a literal, blinding reality. The troops hit the beaches, weapons raised, expecting a storm of enemy machine gun fire to cut them down at any second. But there is only dead silence. The tension is unendurable. 34,000 men are creeping through freezing mud, completely blind, expecting a highly lethal, invisible enemy to ambush them from the shadows. When you put thousands of heavily armed, terrified 19-year-olds into a zero-visibility environment and tell them they are surrounded by elite killers, human psychology eventually breaks. It only takes one glitch to start a cascade failure. A soldier slips on the rocks. A rifle accidentally discharges. A shadow moves in the fog. Suddenly, someone screams, "Contact!" and opens fire. In the blinding whiteout, that single gunshot sounds like an enemy sniper. The squad next to them panics and returns fire into the fog. A Canadian unit moving up the flank hears the gunfire, assumes they are being flanked by the Japanese, and starts shooting back. Within minutes, the entire invasion force is engulfed in a chaotic, multi-directional firefight. The server has completely melted down. US troops are desperately engaging Canadian troops. Artillery is called in to bombard suspected enemy positions, which are actually just Allied platoons pinned down in the mud. To make the nightmare even worse, the Japanese had left behind hundreds of deadly booby traps and hidden landmines. When these explosives randomly detonated, it completely validated the panic. The troops thought, the traps are going off, the enemy is definitely here. They fought fiercely. They threw grenades into empty caves. They charged up hills under heavy covering fire, taking out what they thought were enemy bunkers. For 2 entire days, the island of Kiska echoed with the sounds of a massive, devastating battle. By the 3rd day, the freezing wind finally pushes the fog out to sea. The visibility clears. The Allied commanders look through their binoculars to assess the battlefield and the shattered enemy defenses, but what they see makes their blood run cold. There are no Japanese bodies. There are no enemy bunkers returning fire. They push all the way into the main Japanese base camp, and it is completely abandoned. The only things left behind are a few stray dogs and half-eaten rations on the tables. The Japanese had literally logged out of the server weeks ago. Realizing that defending Kiska was a suicide mission, the Japanese military executed one of the most brilliant stealth extractions in history. Operation K. Under the cover of a massive storm system in late July, a fleet of Japanese cruisers and destroyers silently slipped through the Allied naval blockade, anchored off the coast of Kiska, and evacuated all 5,183 soldiers in less than an hour. They vanished like ghosts, leaving the island completely empty. The Allies had spent 3 weeks aggressively bombing an empty rock, and then launched a 34,000-man invasion against nobody. The final casualty report of Operation Cottage is a grim reminder of how terrifying the human mind can be. Over 300 Allied soldiers became casualties during the invasion. Dozens were killed by friendly fire, landmines and booby traps. Hundreds more were taken out by severe frostbite, trench foot and vehicle accidents in the blinding fog. It was a massive military disaster caused entirely by the environment and psychological warfare. The enemy inflicted severe damage without ever firing a single shot, proving that sometimes the most dangerous enemy on the battlefield is your own terrified imagination. If you want to uncover the rest of the most brutal tactical anomalies in military history, subscribe to TeamAlphaSix right now. The battlefield is waiting.